Hi there everyone, this is Kelly from Truth in Story, and I have a backup of walkthroughs to do of some amazing decks and things. Today I'm just going to do a quick little walkthrough of a very cheap little deck just because I love dragons. I can't find my favorite book because who knows where it is. But you probably, if you've watched my channel long enough, you know one of my favorite books is A Song in the Silence. I have it on Kindle and in physical form, and I wish that they would put it in audiobook form. But I've always loved dragons and dragon books. I love Patricia McKillip. Forgotten Beasts of Eld, in which there's a dragon. But I have always been enamored of dragons. And there are actually not as many dragon tarots as you might think. Lisa Hunt's dragon I traded to my friend Annika because it was a little too, it's beautiful art, it's watercolor art, I love watercolor art, but it's a little bit too soft for me for powerful dragon energy colors. And there's just not a lot, and some of them go really far into the cheese factor fantasy. Bart and I were just looking at some various decks, some older decks of Los Caribbean decks that are like, oh my goodness, let's rein in the 80s fantasy covers, right? So they're definitely it has not been very many that have appealed to me. I can take a little cheese, but it gets a little too much, and then it's like I'm never going to use it. I apologize. I know I have paint on my hand. I've just been painting. But I was at Barnes & Noble's because I had a 30% off coupon for them, and they had this, which I had seen a walkthrough of about a year or so ago. I'll put a link up to it. And at the time it was out of print, and I knew that they were going to be re-releasing it, and I thought, you know what, when that comes out, I'll probably pick that up. It is, I paid $11 for it. It originally was only $18.95, and with a coupon it was $11, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to get it for $11. I have another deck, and I can't remember which one it is, from this because I remember the cardstock. It's terrible cardstock. It's CICO Books from London, and printed in China. The deck is by Nigel Suckling and is illustrated by Roger and Linda Garland. And it includes a full deck of 78 specially commissioned tarot cards. So I do like to see that because it's not one that's just used pre-existing artwork, but it was commissioned for the deck. So that's good to see. It is a pip deck, which is another plus for me, not so much for other people. But again, for $11, I'm like, I'm just going to give this a try, right? So it comes with a color book. It has a very almost Byzantine feel to the artwork. It's not my favorite, but there are some absolutely really some stunning ones as well. So there's a couple that I like, and a lot of them I actually quite like. The pips are very basic pips, but I'm perfectly fine with that. The guidebook is kind of, you know, what you would expect. I really liked the story of the Tower card here. So let's just pause because we can do that. Don't worry, we will go through them all. Don't peek. Don't peek. There we go. So here we have the Tower card. We have a big dragon coming through the tower and exploding the tower. And this says, on the tower, a dragon destroys the tower on Glastonbury Tor, completing the work of its medieval forebear. A church dedicated to Saint Michael, the biblical dragon slayer, was built on top of the Tor, but the dragon fought back, and on September 11th, 1275, the earth shook and the church collapsed. It was rebuilt, but the walls would not stay up, and all that remains now in the tower is the tower, which was built in 1360. And so the dragon is finishing what he started with St. Michael. So I thought that was, I like that. I thought that's, okay, that's pretty cool. So it does talk about mythic dragons. It really talks about how the setup of the minor arcana being elementally based is one that's actually quite apt for dragons, because you generally do see dragon energy associated with the element. So you have fire dragons, water dragons, you know, they're all air dragons, I guess, to some degrees, but kind of winter dragons, ice dragons. So you do tend to have those different breakdowns of dragons. So I really like that. And it kind of talks about that water dragons appear in ancient legend as Leviathan. Excuse me, Leviathan, ruler of the ocean, Typhoon in ancient Egypt, Tiamat in Babylon, and so forth. Air dragons govern the weather and are very often blamed for bad weather in Romania. Storms are believed to be caused by evil wizards flying dragons, and hurricanes are so called after the dragon-like Central America weather god Hurricane. Fire dragons, of course, we see those a lot, from the salamander to the multi-headed dragon Typhus that Zeus imprisoned under Mount Etna. To this day, the dragon struggles to break free, causing eruptions and devastation. And then you have, of course, earth dragons that are curled up in their caves with their treasure. And it says the most famous dragon of ancient Greece was Ladon, who guarded the golden apples of the Hesperides and was slain by Hercules. So it kind of talks about the mythological history of dragons. 3-card spreads. It has a 5-card spread. It has a Romany 7-card pyramid, an Ouroboros spread, and then of course a classic Celtic cross. And then it goes into the cards where you have a color representation, the name, some main key words, what it kind of expressing what's going on, because it does talk about it like a dragonette snapping at the fool's foot, and then an upright and a reverse meaning, and even shows the card small down here in reverse. So it's a nice little guidebook, and you get that for the whole major arcana. And then when it goes to the minors, it switches to 2 cards per page with the upright and the reversed. It seems to me the meanings of the minor cards do seem to be a little more Rider-Waite-Smith. Success and recognition, 4 of Wands, taking a rest in good company. I'm just kind of looking at some that can sometimes stand out. A little bit different on the 4 of Pentacles. Due reward comes after a long struggle, but you need to shrug off any lingering bitterness or sense of grievance. There's some danger of becoming a miser. So it brings that in, but it's not the main thing here. So it does, I just noticed a few things did kind of feel Rider-Waite-Smith based a little bit in the meanings of the minors. But it's a nice little, very colorful book with a nice matte card front. I wish, I wish this could have, more quality could have been put into the cards themselves, to be honest. I love the box. I like these side boxes. I think they look really lovely sitting on the shelf. It's compact. It fits the book. So I like the whole setup here. Really, the main negativity in terms of production is the cardstock. We're talking about ultra thin, glossy, just really thin and not good cardstock. But again, I paid $11. What are you going to expect for $11? So here's the backs, which are reversible and bright blue, which is interesting because, like I said, the deck has a very large border, and it has a little bit more of green tones on the edges for the majors. And the majors do have sort of a carved dragons around it. And then it's a little bit more of a tapestry feel around the minor, so there is a little bit of difference, but it's very earthy tones and very, like I said, it feels a little bit Byzantine. So these very blue modern backs to me don't quite fully go with the aesthetic of the front of the deck. I sometimes wonder if other people like do the backs versus the artist who did the fronts sometimes, because it sometimes feels like they're making them for a different deck for some reason, but it's still pretty. I mean, it's not a bad deck. Bad back. So here we have the fronts. We have a very justery fool. Again, we have, instead of a dog, we do have a playful little dragonette here. We have the typical bag, even though it has little dragon tails hanging off of it. But it is a very traditional fool card here. He's on the edge of a cliff. And you can again see large borders. This is not traditional, but they are in those little door-shaped. And I could be very wrong when I say Byzantine, but it just has that sort of feeling of a very specific style that I think is actually lovely. Again, way too much border going on for the images, but and you certainly couldn't trim this because of the way that it's set up and with the kind of doorway, entryway there. But it's almost like you go into a church and there's little alcoves where there's can be paintings or statuettes or things of that nature, and that's kind of that feeling with that doorway there, which I don't mind if there maybe had been less of the border. I don't mind that little door shape there, but not my favorite fool for sure. Here we have the Magician. He does look very powerful. I like the dragon on his head, or the dragon head on his head. It's very traditional. Again, you've got all the pentacles and the cups, and you have the sword, and I'm sure he's got a wand in his hand. So again, quite traditional imagery there for a magician, but he looks old and wise. I feel like a lot of the people, if not all, have their eyes closed, which is very interesting. I'm going to look more carefully as we turn through these, but he certainly, of course, I do have bad eyesight, but it looks to me like his eyes are closed. And so does hers, which makes sense with the High Priestess, because the High Priestess is going inward. Again, it's got that, I keep thinking Byzantine, and we've got this sort of veil going under the chin, a very sort of medieval, almost rigid body stance. But I do like some of the artwork here. I like the book here. I like her eyes closed, especially in the High Priestess, because she is going, she's the queen of going inward and on downward. Here's the Empress, which I think is actually beautiful. Now, her eyes do look like they're open. So maybe it's the Magician and the High Priestess, because they're going, their power is within, whereas the Empress and the Emperor's power is without. That's pretty cool. I think she's beautiful. We've got the apple here. Again, a little bit almost oriental feeling to some of the headpieces. I love the dresses that go right under the breasts and then drop down. I think that's a gorgeous look, and it's something that I love. But I think she's beautiful. I do really like this. We've got the hatching dragons here. I quite like this king. He's literally got the dragon wrapped around his throne, in his lap. Definitely the sense of power here, controlled power. I quite like him. I love the Hierophant as just a dragon. That would be one of my negatives. Now, I didn't notice this before, but it looks like he may actually have a priest hat on his head. Let's look in the book, because I'm going to ignore that and say he's curled around like a tombstone, because that's kind of ridiculous. The Hierophant represents a leader of established religion. He is a natural counterpart of the High Priestess, but he's formal and even more political, that often blinds him to the spiritual values he guards, while often providing real community comfort to his followers. Obsession with history and tradition often blinds him to new spiritual development, so it doesn't speak to that. We're going to ignore that possible priest hat on the dragon. Here we have the Lovers card. I actually like this. Again, has a very medieval flair to it. Very fantasy, obviously, feel to it. I like their hands together. Almost have a sense of being hand-fast. They're holding a rose. We have the dragon surrounding them. I like Lovers cards to have three things because for me it represents the higher conscious, the conscious and the subconscious self, the conscious and the subconscious self, and so I like that. But I actually quite like that. I do. This one I don't like as much. To me, the artwork doesn't feel similar to the rest so far. There's this very bold, almost smooth tone to a lot of the paintings. There's a little bit not so much there, but I feel like this one doesn't feel like the same art style. This almost feels pastel-y versus, say, oil or acrylic. There's just something about this one that doesn't quite, I like the idea of it because you've got the fighting white and the black dragon. I wish he wasn't like confined to the earth. He should be up in the air with the dragons, but yeah, artistically wise, I feel like it doesn't feel like the same as the rest, but it's not horrible. This, I think, is gorgeous. This is one of my favorites. This Justice card is stunning. She's blinded by her hat, but she has the dragon around her as well as up on her head and her sword and her scales. I think that's really beautiful. I love the Hermit as well. I think he is gorgeous. I love his cloak. I love his helmet with the dragon coming. I love the dragons surrounding the lantern. I just like him a lot. He's pretty awesome. Very medieval Wheel of Fortune with there's a name for these rooster dragons, but I can't think of it off the top. I don't think it's a Shimra. Let's see if it tells us. Let's peek. We can. These are so much faster to do because we're, it's all pip deck. So I think we can take a little extra time here. Cockatrice. Yes, or also can be called a basilisk. Cockatrice. Who thought of a rooster dragon in the world, in the history of the world? We have sort of a monkey here and a donkey here and a cockatrice. Here we have the Strength card. She's in a little bit of an odd position with her arms and things, and she's definitely going inward with the eyes closed. I kind of like that. I mean, I do feel like there are some indications with the eyes of the inward and outward kind of energy there that I think is pretty beautiful. I'm not a fan of strength cards, even though it is traditional, where they're kind of pulling the mouth apart of the lion, or in this case the dragon, but it definitely has that connotation of an inward struggle, so I do think it's lovely. Here we have the Hanged Man being very trusting of this dragon, dangling him over the cliff, very calm. We even have a little bit of the leg behind, not quite in the four, the upside down four position that we normally see, but he definitely looks very, very calm and very dapper in his quite beautiful blue vest. So I do like that. Here we have Death, which is, again, quite traditional. We have the flag going here. We have this beautiful green dragon instead of a horse, but we have the typical death that we see in older decks. We do see the beautiful sunrise and the ship in there. So it's quite a traditional death card. We just, instead of writing a horse, he is writing a dragon. Here we have a lovely Temperance. See how we have that glow behind her head that we would see perhaps in church style paintings. Again, this painting doesn't quite feel the same as the rest of them, but it does again have that sort of medieval church style to it that I actually quite like. This is one of two that are my least favorites. Again, we do have that sort of more of that devil dragon. This is certainly very much something that you would see in an older style deck with the devil, especially if you're going to do a dragon. But this is pretty atypical to what you might see. Of course, we have more of the Rider-Waite-Smith with the man and the woman in the flames. They're not bound at all, so they could actually leave. But artistically, this just isn't my favorite, and but it does work as a medieval style devil. There's no question there. We talked about the tower. I think that's awesome that the dragon has come back to even the score with the Dragon Slayer. Here we have the star card, which I think is actually really beautiful. It's got that more watery dragon feel to it there. I love the star being so prominent and shooting up like that and outward. I think it's gorgeous. I love this moon. I think we still have the lobster here. We have the two towers. We have a beautiful moon. And we have the two dragons on either side. I think it's gorgeous. I love it. And you can all guess this is not one of my favorites. I do like the dragon in the sun. That's pretty cool. You know, there's legends of there being dragons curled around the core of the earth. So having that idea of a dragon sort of being perhaps birthed in the core of the sun is pretty cool. But we just had to have those sunflowers and naked babies. We just had to get them in there. I think this is really awesome. Here's Judgment. She's sort of an angel of a dragon angel. Instead of wings, she's got dragony wings. I just think she's pretty cool. I like what's going on here where we sort of have the earth and all almost like dragons in the air itself and her swooping up. I quite like it. Again, it just has a very old church. I mean, it's obviously the theme is dragon, but it has that sense of artwork that you would find in a church. I love this world card. You've got the earth dragons, fire dragons, air dragons, and water dragons. You've got a dragon wrapped around in the Ouroboros of biting his tail, wrapped around the earth itself. I think that's pretty awesome. I quite like that. I quite like that. And so that is the major arcana. So really not too bad. There are a couple cards that don't quite feel artistically the same as the rest of the deck. Probably most with the Temperance and the Chariot card, where it just feels like a different art style. But otherwise, I do quite like this. Too big of borders, no question. It works. I would have liked it to stay. I like the windows, so I would keep that, but just, you know, not quite so much of a border there. So where you can see this sort of panel, where again, like you almost could see these like all around the inside of a church with these images, we have a different setup for the minors where we have this like cutout going on here. And so each of the aces, let's get those out. Cups, we have the Ace of Pentacles flying over a pentacle. We have, I quite like this page of, oh, this page. Whoops, I do like him. No, we'll come back to him. Ace of Wands, we have that fire dragon, so a water dragon, an earth dragon in his cave, a fire dragon here in the volcano, and then we have a beautiful Ace of Swords. Oops, can you even, did I even scooched it out so you could see? No, that would be too easy. So there's our aces. Let me put them back correctly. The coloring on the rest of the deck Doesn't always really matchy, but let's take a look. So here we have the Ace of Cups, and of course these are pips, and they're very, very simple pips. We don't have exact backgrounds. Like this looks like it could almost be a scene here. So it's not like it's just a repetitive background, because then could this then go on and be sort of a panoramic? It looks like this is sort of an island here. And then it goes just into water, which could, you know, kind of be over here. So it does kind of feel like a scene in some regards, but then you have some other pieces that doesn't exactly kind of flow into a scene. But they are different. This has got a castle here. Here we can see a little bit of some runes or structures, but it's not the exact same. I don't think any are exactly repeating, so they don't appear to be. So I won't do this to the other ones. Just I'm kind of using this as these three are similar, but they aren't exact. So it's like perhaps there was a whole painting that was kind of cut up to create the backgrounds, but they aren't identical. As some of these cheaper style decks, that will be the case. So again, just a real basic pips, but they are lovely, and I don't mind the backgrounds here. We'll see how the others do. And then here we have our quartz. So we have the Page of Cups here with a kind of a small dragon in a cup. We have the Knight of Cups riding on his water dragon. We have the beautiful Queen of Cups kind of dancing with her dragon. And then we have the King of Cups looking out into the water. For the Pentacles, again, we have quite, you know, pentacly green, earthy colors. These are actually hold really well. Again, they are not repeated. So we have the 2s, the 3s. It has that. It also has the 3 many times telling us 2, 2, 2 of Pentacles, making sure we can't, you know, in case we can't count the 2 Pentacles there. Not sure why we have that excessiveness going on there, but, you know. 3s. I actually think these backgrounds, again, minus these giant borders, I think the backgrounds for the pips are pretty. They're different. Let me take a look at the 7s. Different formations of the pips than what you would normally see, but you still can do a 4 plus a 3. And then I love this Page of Pentacles, learning from the dragon. The Knight of Pentacles coming out of the cave. Again, really sticking with that earth dragon. Looks like a very, this doesn't even have wings on the Queen of Pentacles. And either with the King of Pentacles. So very much earthy dragon. So I mean, it feels like thought went into the dragons for the suits, even though it is a pip deck in a relatively cheap deck. Here we have of course, we've looked at the Ace of Wands. We have the 2. We have the 3. We've got this kind of, again, some of them do feel like they kind of connect and can be part perhaps of a landscape, not that much, because then we kind of move to the desert, it looks like. But again, the scenes don't, they're not repetitive. They have used other backgrounds in each background. So I think that's a nice touch to a cheaper pip style deck. I'm glad to see that at least. We have the Page of Wands, almost like he's marching off with some messages or something going on here. We have the powerful Knight of Wands, the Queen of Wands. It's almost like an Asian Byzantine. And then we have the King of Wands here. And of course, lastly, my favorite suit, we have the 2. Again, I like the background here. It's really quite beautiful. Almost like this city way up in the clouds. I really do like the backgrounds. He's probably my least favorite. Again, like a couple of the other cards, artistically it doesn't feel the same. It's like it's like it was a different kind of art style than the other ones. Similar to, again, the Chariot, Temperance. I just don't feel like, especially, we'll put these up to even both of these, but this one really stands out. Because I think the Queen and the King of... while the coloration is very wand energy, but I think they're beautiful and so powerful. Whereas if you put this one artistically next to these, and these are of the same suit, they really don't feel like they're quite fully developed, finished paintings like these are, or it was a different art style. And there's only a couple, but I think that that causes those to stand out when there's only a couple. When all of them are really quite bold and rich in color, I mean, look at how bold that is. And so then when you have ones like this, they just kind of stand out as a bit lackluster and just not as high quality art. But that's, you know, that's a minor quibble. Again, I paid $11, so it's not that I can complain. I actually quite love that we're looking at different backgrounds in the pips, and they're really quite lovely, actually. You know, this riffle shuffles well because it's very thin cardstock, but it's, you know, it's bad cardstock. There's no two ways about it. You get what you pay for in this particular deck. Now, I love, you know, you can get cheaper Low Scarabeo decks, and I absolutely love Low Scarabeo cardstock, where this is a cheaper deck, you know, but that's only in a little tuck box, where we do have really good packaging here, which is nice. But, you know, I would have paid, you know, $5 more or whatever to just get the cardstock up a little bit, and or maybe even had less of this in order to have good cards, because this sits on a shelf, and this is great, but I'm probably never going to look at this again. This is what, you know, is the tool, and this is what I'm paying for, is this. And so I would much prefer any extra money to go into the cards and we all want good packaging and everything, but I'm just saying in terms of keeping cost down. Sometimes, and I fully understand that as a deck creator, you have to sometimes make those calls of what's more important, the box or the deck. And if you have to choose one of those things, which often happens when you're trying to do something yourself, or that, I would much prefer that the money goes into the cardstock. But I won't beat that up because, again, you know, I knew what I was getting when I bought the deck. I'll have to look in my collection and see what the other deck I have is by this same company. I feel like it's not Watkins Press. Watkins Press is, you know, cheaper, but their cardstock is actually better than this. So I can't remember, but I know I have another one. Let's just take a look at what these would look like. I feel like this would be a deck that would look best with just like 3 cards, but let's do, you know, one of my typical large tarot readings. Past and into the future. Again, I really do like the pips. Sun card. We can see the different banner here to kind of stand out. That we do have a major. Maybe more of a color shift might have been helpful to really make the major arcana stand out. But that's just nitpicking. It is actually really lovely in the Hierophant. So even with those big borders, I think it's still quite lovely. It kind of goes with the aesthetic of the deck. I'm not fond of big borders like that, especially ones I have no... I mean, could I trim this? Technically, yeah, but in order to get them all exactly correct, it would be really difficult. Like, I could take some of that off, but that's way too much work for it to be worth doing it. And I actually think it looks pretty cool. like that. So there you have it. Just a quick, again, with a pip deck, it's a little bit easier and quicker to do walkthrough because you're really cutting out 40 cards, right, to have to look at. But I wanted to shuffle these, and so of course I can't shuffle them till I do the walkthrough, so that's why I decided to pick it up. I'm sure, I have no clue what these are on Amazon, but I'm sure it's probably in the $14 range because it's $18.95 US. I got it on Barnes & Noble's with a 30% off coupon they have for President's Day coming up. And so it was $11 for me, and to me it's worth $11, and I actually like a lot of the artwork. I wish that those few cards didn't sort of let down the rest of the art, but I think I'm going to enjoy this one because I just love dragons. I just love dragons, and there's just not a ton out there of good dragons that don't go really bad in the cheese factory, because I love them so much. They can't really be negative towards dragons, because yes, there can be evil dragons, but I see dragons much differently, more as, you know, kind of old, ancient, wise energies. And so, oh, look at that. So there you have it. I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you have an absolutely wonderful day.